Well, shit. Hold on. And Adion can fuck right off. Just spilled a little bit. I swear I'm not that tipsy. Oh, fuck. We're all fucked. Why? Why would you do this to me? Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books. I'm gonna forewarn you. I'm bulk filming right now. A few videos. And I'm slightly buzzed. I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm tipsy. I'm just buzzed a little bit. I had a migraine earlier, so real dumb that I decided to start drinking wine. This is not sponsored, obviously. But I've discovered this McBride, wow, it's condensation. McBride Sisters Collection, Black Girl Magic, bubbly wine cans, like sparkling wine. They're at Target. And they're a little pricey, I'm not gonna lie. It's $10 per can. I don't drink wine like all crazy like that much because it does tend to give me migraines. So yeah, I don't know. I find them tasty. And I started drinking one that I drank half of last night, and I drank the other half. I started getting a little buzzed, but I wanted to film some videos. So I was like, I don't think I've ever done like, while drunk, like videos. But I wanted to do the unpopular opinions tag again because it's been 3 fucking years since I did it, which I didn't realize. So I was like, I'm a little buzzed. Let me do the unpopular opinions tag. But I have some other ones I want to do too. So we're doing a couple. Fuck it. Maybe it'll be funny. Maybe I'll act the fucking same, you know? But yeah, recent wrap up. I have a few books to talk about. Not a shit ton. 4. Yeah, and one's a DNF. And one's a reread. And one was a very short nonfiction. Whatever. I'll just get into it. The first one is reread of Kingdom of Ash, the buddy read that Ingrid at Ingrid Inspired, and then Roger at Rogers Reads and I were doing. And Ingrid and I have both read the Throne of Glass series prior. Roger had not. I had only read Kingdom of Ash once before. I'm still forever fucking mad at this piss yellow cover. Why? Why would you do this to me? To all of us. Anyway, though, yes, I finished this. I primarily listened to it on audio, as I did with the rest of the books, except for Assassin's Blade and I think Throne of Glass. But that one I think I did switch to audio. My first time listening to the audiobooks, I quite enjoyed them. I did read this physically, though, the last bit here. All right, so this is definitely not my favorite of the series by any means. I think it's a pretty solid ending as far as my experience with Sarah J. Maas's endings. Akawar, I'm looking at you. Akawar made me not want to continue. Oh, dang. My fucking thing just died. Well, shit. Hold on. Ah! Sorry about that. My box light died. I had to plug it in. The battery died. Anyway, what the hell was I saying? Kingdom of Ash. Yeah, not my favorite, but compared to Akawar, I think it's a fairly solid ending. I mean, it has its typical Sarah J. Maas issues. The pairing up, heterosexual pairing up of everyone. God forbid we have a male character and a female character who are unattached romantically and interact for more than 5 minutes and don't fall in love. And Adion can fuck right off. Kale is whatever, he's back. It's fine. I basically just didn't give a fuck about any of the romances in this book, aside from Manon, her romantic interest. Manon is by far my favorite character on this reread. And yeah, her romance is the only one I fucking cared about. Take any of the other romances and their love scenes. If you take Lorcan and his love interest, and you don't tell me, if you give me this scene, and you don't tell me who the characters are, and you tell me it's Rowan and his love interest, okay, sure. Couldn't fucking tell them apart in their intimacy scenes. Manon, though, and her love interest, I feel like they're the only ones that are interesting at all. Their romance. Their dynamic together is the only one that is different from the rest. The rest of them are all very cookie cutter, Sarah J. Maas romances. It's whatever. I just didn't really care. On this reread, any of the romance scenes, I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. Anyway, I was just here for the fun shit that I think Sarah J. Maas does well. The, like, just kind of corny, epic action movie style, oh my god, badass, here comes the cavalry shit. I love it. And towards the end, there were several, these purple tabs are like emotional things that got me a little choked up or got me like, oh, fuck yeah. And one in particular that did make me cry, again, something involving Manon and her whole thing, characters surrounding her, and yeah, just anyway. If Sarah J. Maas wrote a spin-off series, even just a novella of after the end of this book, following Manon and her love interest, I would fucking die. I'd be so happy. Oh my god. I would love it. Manon is by far my favorite. Anyway, okay, rambled enough about this. I ended up on this reread rating it slightly lower than the first time. The first time I gave it 4 stars. This time I gave it 3.75. This is still a fun time. I still hold a lot of nostalgia for Throne of Glass, even though several issues. This shit could have been like at least 200 to 300 pages shorter. We did not need 900 some pages, but still a fun time. Wow. Okay, that's not because I'm tipsy. That's just, I do that a lot. Miss my entire mouth. Jesus Christ. I don't think you can see it, hopefully. Just spilled a little bit. I swear I'm not that tipsy. I forgot that this was a new can and that it was like really full. I thought it was the other can I had. And the next book that I read is, I think the first, is this the fucking, that's sad. Shoshana, Jesus Christ. I had a goal of reading more nonfiction, but this is the first nonfiction I've completed this year. The Future We Choose, Surviving the Climate Crisis by Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac, architects of the 2015 Paris Agreement. This is quite short. I ended up listening to it on audio, and I enjoyed this, okay? It's kind of a mixed bag with this one. I found it very accessible and pretty engaging. I mean, it is shorter, so that's nice. It relayed, to me, in my perspective, productive and important information, and it kept my interest, right? I mean, again, it's quite short, but sometimes nonfiction, even being short, can be like, okay, anyway. And I found myself being very curious about what they were going to say about each topic. And like, I did find there to be new and profound information, which is one of the kind of check boxes I look for with nonfiction. There was an entire section about stubborn optimism that I thought was a really great perspective, where they're basically saying part of having success in surviving the climate crisis, part of that involves all of us having stubborn optimism. Like, recognizing the very real possibilities and like being realistic about things, but not being fatalistic, which is just way too easy in this day and age of social media and Twitter outrage and panic and just overstimulation, and we just know about all the bad things going on in the world at all times, everywhere, and it's a lot, and it can get very like doomsday feeling, right? It's very easy to just pop on Twitter for like 10 to 15 minutes and suddenly be like, oh fuck, we're all fucked. So I appreciated this whole section, and they were talking about the psychology of it, of stubborn optimism, and that if we all feel fatalistic, and if everyone on earth feels like, well, we can't do shit, nobody will try to do shit. Nobody will try to fix it and make progress. And that's bad. We have to be stubbornly optimistic and like, no, we can still change it, because we can currently. Right now, we still can change it. Yes, a lot of this involves corporations changing things, but they talk about how there are corporations already who have filed for bankruptcy and listed people divesting from like fossil fuels as the reason for bankruptcy, right? Like shit like that, where like there is progress being made. And as individuals, there's only so much we can do, but big things we can do is, speaking to our politicians, giving our voice to our politicians, letting them know what we think and what we want, using our dollars to speak to corporations, telling them on social media what we think of their policies and practices and sustainability endeavors and all of that. So I really liked that whole element of it. Is it easier said than done to not be fatalistic? Yes, very much so. But I did appreciate it. And so was this successful in its intended message in my perspective? I do think so. This wasn't a lot of like data and statistics about climate change. If you're looking for that, this is not the book for that. But I do think like this is a book I would recommend to most everyone. So like I don't think this is the only thing that you should read about climate change necessarily. And if you already kind of have this perspective and you're looking for just more data about it, then I probably wouldn't recommend this. But definitely if you're someone who's pretty fatalistic and kind of like, well, I could just give up, I would say read this. I will warn you, the first couple chapters, one chapter, I was like listening to it and trying to go to bed, and I was like finishing this one chapter, and then I was like, I need to read the next one, because the first chapter is looking at a hypothetical of 2050, the year 2050, if we do not follow the things listed in the Paris Agreement, if world governments, corporations, if we have failed, basically, and basically the dystopian that we will be living in. And I'm not a person who has like anxiety, panic disorder, anything like that, but I was listening to this and I was like, I gotta listen to the next one, because the next chapter is looking at 2050 if we have stopped the rise in temperature. And like now we live in a regenerative world. It looks different than what our current world looks like, but it was much more hopeful. And so I was like, I have to listen to this chapter, because I can't go to sleep just listening to this horrible dystopian doomsday shit. So heads up that there is one chapter of like hypothetically what we could be looking at that's a little stressful, but the rest of the book is quite hopeful. So I ended up giving this a 4.5 on my rating scale. Next up was a DNF, and this is this my first DNF in a minute? Well, since the end of April, so went one whole month without one. And it is Trouble the Saints by Aliyah Dawn Johnson, and I really like this cover. There's another cover too that I quite like as well. This is historical fiction, alternate history, where there's a little bit of kind of fantasy element, maybe magical realism, fabulism, whatever you want to call it. It's 1942. It says, a dazzling, daring novel, a magical love story, a compelling exposure of racial fault lines, and an altogether brilliant and deeply American saga. So we have our main character who is like kind of in the underworld. She's working for basically like a mob boss, a crime boss guy, and she is essentially kind of his hitman, one of his hitmen. And she has the hands, they call them the Saints' hands, people who have basically magical abilities where they can do different things. With her, it's throwing knives with magical accuracy. And we go from there. Now, this is a book where I wasn't mad at anything. I actually quite liked the characters, and I found the premise and the plot to be solid, interesting, intriguing. The pacing was cool, like it was fine. It was just, I think the writing style, it just wasn't gripping me. I got 90 pages in, I think. Let me double check. Okay, 27%. It was just not the writing style for me. It was a little bit too like angsty, vague, deep, profound thoughts and ruminating on things and blah, blah, blah. Like that whole kind of really heady thing. That is just not my style. Call me a simple bitch, if you will. Just not my style. But I would recommend this to people. Like, I think a fair amount of people would find this really fun and engaging. Not the book for me, but I wasn't mad at it. And then this one I just finished last night, and it was a little disappointing, and I think I'm actually going to change the rating that I have on my sheet. The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. So this is another historical fiction. I listened to this on audio. I read like a couple chapters physically, like 5 to 10 chapters physically, but mostly on audio. And this cover is so pretty, and it has this whole thing and the deckled edges. I love it. Content warnings for a threat of suicide and suicide attempt from a character, and then kind of using the threat of suicide as an emotional manipulation tactic. Not great. Mental illness, perhaps not handled super well. I can't speak from personal experience. I just saw some reviews of people not appreciating the mental illness representation from a side character. And then also, I will say, loss of child from a couple different characters. There's like lots of different characters we're like kind of interacting with, and we have like miscarriage and infant death in here, so heads up for that for sure. And this one is set in 1953, Tehran, Iran. And I really liked all of the cultural elements. I have family members by marriage, obviously, who are Persian, Iranian, and I recognized a lot of the dishes, the food they were talking about, and Nowruz, Persian New Year, and all of that, like the table they set out. Like, I'm familiar with all of those cultural elements, so that was really cool to see. But yeah, my thing with this is it's very beautifully written. I want to see, I don't know if this author has written anything else, probably, but I'm not totally sure. I want to look though, because I did really like the writing style. And for a historical fiction, kind of romance, like love story, epic love story, the pacing was really good, the writing and everything worked, and I wasn't having a bad time listening to it. However, maybe I'm heartless, but this is just not the kind of love story for me. The premise is an idealistic teenager in the political upheaval of 1953 Tehran finds a literary oasis in Mr. Fakhri's neighborhood stationery shop. Mr. Fakhri, with a keen instinct for a budding romance, introduces her to his other favorite customer, handsome Bahman, who has a burning passion for justice and a love for Rumi's poetry. Woo. And Roya loses her heart at once. Their relationship blossoms. A few short months later, on the eve of their marriage, Roya agrees to meet Bahman at the town square. But suddenly violence erupts, a result of the coup that forever changes their country's future. In the chaos, Bahman never shows. For weeks, Roya tries desperately to contact him, but her efforts are fruitless. Reluctantly, she moves on, to college in California, to another man, to a life in New England, until a chance encounter nearly 60 years later gives her the opportunity to ask him the questions that have haunted her for more than half a century. Why did you leave? Where did you go? How is it that you were able to forget me? Okay, that's the setup. I just can't get that invested in a teenage first love, puppy love romance that ends in 60 years of pining and unrequited love. I just can't. I can completely understand being a teenager and feeling like this is the end-all be-all, like I'm gonna marry this person and we're gonna be happily ever after. I've been there, done that, okay? And looking back, it's not that those feelings were invalid, it's just they were very fucking hormonal, just in love with love, first love, having little experience with romance, and just, being swept up in the romance of it all. Not really based in realistic compatibility, right? So I can look back on my teenage romances and be like, wow, I was so head over heels for that dude. Whatever. But as I got older, I knew it wasn't actually some deep, profound love. I saw a bunch of 5-star reviews of people being like, I cried so much. And I was like, I didn't feel like crying at all. There were a couple parts that got a little emotional, but not because of the romance. I didn't find it like some tragic, profound thing. I was like, you guys were teenagers, calm down, get over it. So maybe I'm heartless, like I said. At any rate, I am gonna end up giving this one 3 stars, simply because I didn't hate the reading experience necessarily. I was just like waiting to get like swept up in the emotion of it all, and I just wasn't. So yeah, I liked the writing style, though. I would check out something else from this author. And there we have it. Those are the 4 books to talk about today. I'm in the middle of 2 others at the moment. I'm still about 50% of the way through Kushiel's Avatar by Jacqueline Carey, book 3 of Phaedra's trilogy. And then I'm also just started Siren and Scion by J.D. Evans, which is the 3rd book in the Mages of the Wheel series, which is a self-published, indie-published fantasy romance that I'm really enjoying. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.